Double check, make sure this is the spot where I'm supposed to do my thing now. Just double check. Wow. Breath of heaven indeed. So as we heard from the scriptures this morning, it's that reminder in the story that Joseph had a choice to make. We learned that he decides, after he finds out that she is with child, and knowing that it is not his child, that because he is a good man, he is going to do things quietly. Well, in our society, we just think that he's being polite. In their society, he is literally saving her life. He had a legal claim on Mary, being betrothed, being engaged, which was a legally binding covenant contract, that he could have had her drug out into the city square and stoned until dead for breaking that with infidelity. So for him to do these things quietly made sure that her life and the life of her unborn child would still be secured, and he would just graciously bow out and break it off and make it look like he was the bad guy, like he was the one calling the shots, and he was just some kind of philanderer and womanizer, and he would just move on to the next gal that he thought might be a little cuter than Mary. That's the reality of the story that you don't realize when you just read through the words. There's something much deeper that's going on in the agony of Joseph, and in the midst of this agony, he goes to sleep one night and is visited by God's messenger, the angel, probably Gabriel. And is told it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. As I was prayerfully approaching the message for today that I wanted to bring to you on God's behalf, I began to think, what is the message that you need to hear right now? Many different circumstances, perhaps, many different life journeys going on just in this collection of folks we have here at Acton United Methodist Church. And I thought that no matter where you were in your life right this minute, you would probably like to hear the message from God, it's going to be okay. What do you think? Is that a good message to hear today for you? It's going to be okay? Well, spoiler alert, that's the message for today. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And see, when Joseph got through that and he took a deep breath and he knew that it was going to be okay, that peaceful joy overcame him and he was able to move forward and begin the trek to Bethlehem with Mary and the unborn Jesus. Knowing that although the path would be difficult, God had already promised that he would not be alone, that God would take care of them. Joseph was at peace. Now, I want to go back through some of the stories throughout the Gospels of primarily Matthew and Luke, because I think that there is a pattern here that we should probably investigate. I think God has placed things, and if you're like me, I tend to have to yell across the house for my wife to remind me where I put something. And I usually hide it in plain sight, right? Where is this thing I'm looking for? And she'll say, it's on the countertop next to this or that or the other. And that's like right where I'm standing. Hidden in plain sight. See, I think that God does very similar things with Scripture. We get so used to reading these stories and we hear them that it's not that we don't appreciate them. It's not that we don't love them. It's just that they're so familiar we might not be able to see them from another angle. So today I want to go through a few things with you. And I want you to think about the phrase, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Now, do not be afraid happens within the course of both the Hebrew Scriptures and the New Testament, more than 70 times, depending on what translation you're using, because it can kind of go a few different ways. But for the most part, 70 times, don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. Or the King James, fear not. Fear not. The first part of our story is an Advent story, and that is when the highly ranking Zechariah, who is married to Mary's cousin Elizabeth, is going through his process and is visited by an angel to share about the birth of his son, John, who would be called the baptizer. And the angel says, I know you've been trying to have a son. I know that you and your wife have struggled. Do not be afraid. Translation, it's going to be okay. Do not be afraid. It's going to be okay. And remember that story. I love that story because what happens? The Lord shuts his mouth. He's got this great news. He's going to be a dad. Everything is going to be okay. He's got this great position of honor. And God's like, you doubted. So you're still going to have the blessing, but I'm not going to let you tell anyone about it. It's like the guy who skips church and gets a hole-in-one on the golf course. Who's he going to tell? Wait, you were golfing? Weren't you supposed to be in church? Yeah, but... Oh, shoot. Oh, yeah. Ooh. And then after Zechariah, we find out from Mary herself, the angel, and we are told it's Gabriel, visits her and says what? Fear not, for you have found favor with God. Blessed art thou among women. Don't be afraid, Mary. Do not be afraid. Translation, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You're going to have a son. And what is wonderful about Mary's reaction, we just heard a modern interpretation of that. We also call that within the higher church traditions the Magnificat, Mary's song. This beautiful thing about what this Jesus is going to do on the behalf of God for the sake of all humanity. Don't be afraid. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then the one we just heard today, Joseph. Joseph's sleeping. Angel comes to him. Do not be afraid to take her as your wife. Do not be afraid. Joseph, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. After they make the trek through to Bethlehem, and they're there, and the baby is born, and the star aligns, and the wise men aren't there yet. They had to stop and ask for directions. They do, look it up. And then it kind of comes forward, and then what happens? We pan out and we move into this nearby field where these shepherds are hanging out. If you've ever been to Bethlehem, out in the outskirts where the shepherds were, it's called Shepherd's Field. And they're hanging out, and there's this big kind of valley, and so they could kind of naturally keep an eye on the sheep. The sheep wouldn't necessarily climb that steep of a hill to get away. It was easier to keep track, so they probably had a small fire going to keep warm, and they were all huddled and hanging out. And they didn't get the benefit of a dream filter for their angelic experience. The angel was right before them, and it was so brightly illuminated, it scared the ever-loving out of those guys. And what did the angel say? Fear not. Don't be afraid. Or what? It's going to be okay. For born unto you this day in the city. Born unto what? No, born unto the affluent. No, born unto the royalty. No, born unto you this day. This is amazing, right? Oh, shoot, I didn't check to make sure we had shepherds in this nativity set. All right, I'm a shepherd. So if you look at your standard nativity set, you have Mary and the Joseph. Jesus isn't here yet. Technically, the wise men should be farther off, but we ran out of real estate on the altar, so bear with us. And so the storytelling goes this way, that here are these rich royal kings from the far east, and then the shepherds are kneeling in homage to the baby Jesus. You could not get a wider span between the socioeconomic status of the wise men and the shepherds. The richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor every year take up residency in our nativity sets. And one of the truest meanings of Christmas is that Christ came for all is sometimes lost on us as we just go into mechanical mode of setting up and decorating for Christmas. So I challenge you this year, because I'm sure you've already got your decorations already set up, but I challenge you as you're putting things away to remember that. As you take those shepherds and put them back into their wrapping or their styrofoam cases or whatever it is that you put your nativity set back into, to remember that within the symbolic little knick-knack celebration that we decorate with every holiday season, the true meaning of Christmas is spread out between kings and shepherds. Now, after the shepherds show up, that's pretty cool. And then Jesus grows up, starts his ministry, and as he is calling his disciples, Jesus utters these words to James and John, fear not. Don't be afraid. It's going to be okay, because I will have you fish for people. I will make you fishers of men. I will make you fish for people. I will make you my disciple. It's going to be okay. Why are all these messages of it's going to be okay there? That makes more sense on the last one. Jesus is crucified. He dies. He's placed on a stone slab in a new tomb owned by Joseph of Arimathea. The same kind of soft stone, probably, that was easy to carve or move around. The same stone that was used as mangers in caves for livestock that the baby Jesus was laid into, the grown-up Savior of all, was laid out on a slab, a stone slab in the tomb, and then the rock was rolled to seal the tomb. Now women had come to anoint the body, to put spices on the body, and they would come the next day because it was the Sabbath. They couldn't work on the Sabbath. So they came on Sunday morning to do that. They brought spices. They brought spices like frankincense and myrrh. But when they came to anoint his body and to prepare it for burial, they found the stone had been rolled away. The tomb was no longer sealed, and an angel was sitting on the top of it and said, what? It's gonna be okay. Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Fear not. Don't be afraid. It's gonna be okay. The message of the entirety of Jesus' life, his death, his resurrection is, guess what? It's gonna be okay. I don't know if I've got enough food to feed all these people that are descending upon my house. It's gonna be okay. I just don't know if I can get through this holiday season. I've been going through some stuff and my heart is really heavy. It's going to be okay. Fear not. Don't be afraid. Whether it's something superficial or it's something that you're really wrestling with, it'll be all right. It will be okay. Advent and peaceful joy is here to give you an alternative to your default response in life. And friends, that is our default response. When we are challenged, when we are cornered, when we are presented with a situation, our natural default response is to become scared. Now, we then respond in numerous ways out of our fear, but we become afraid. That is why the angel's first response to all of these people in the Bible, to all these people who bookend the story of Jesus for our lives, say what? It's going to be okay. Don't be afraid. Don't retreat within yourself. Open up to God. It'll be all right. And then what happened in every situation? Was it easy? No. You think that trek to Bethlehem from Nazareth was easy? No, it was not. You think it was easy to try and figure out as the protector of your family, if you're Joseph, on how to make sure that there was a safe place for your child to be born? And all you can find is a stable? You think that was easy? No. You think Mary's childbirth was easy? No. Think it was easy for those shepherds to come into the birth of a king? No. And then when they got there, what did they find? Jesus came to them on their home turf. You ever think about that? That the people who were the most at home in the Nativity were the shepherds, amongst all those animals and things put away for the night to be safe. When we're first afraid, when we go into fight or flight, we're all kinds of freaking out. And then we come to the notion of love. Perfect love, what? It casts out all fear. Oh, there seems to be a connection there. Jesus said perfect love casts out all fear. When we are afraid, if we want to do something about not wanting to be afraid, our response is not to become angry. Our response is to become loving and more loving. And know what? It's going to be okay. Then we come out to that notion of love. And Jesus isn't telling us that it's not going to be tough. He's not telling us there won't be suffering. He's not telling you that your trek's going to all of a sudden be easy. What he's doing is he's telling you that you do not have to go it alone and that God will be with you every step of the way. Christ, and listen to this, Christ is just telling you that whatever it is that you're going through will not win. It will not obliterate you. It will not define you if you just can hold on to his love, because perfect love casts out all fear. Don't be afraid. It's going to be okay. So this peace, then, that I'm talking about is your gift today. It is your Christmas gift. So that every moment of your life you do not have to worry or be afraid. Peace comes like a river, and it brings you strength, and it lets you know that with Christ there is nothing to be afraid of from cradle to grave and beyond. Christ is there every moment of your life saying, fear not. It's going to be okay. Then just maybe, just maybe, if you really hear those loving words, do not be afraid, you may just be able to respond, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. In fact, why don't we just go ahead and sing that? Verse 1, it is well.